1066, a year that changed England forever. A kingdom divided, a battle for the throne, and a clash of warriors that sealed the fate of a nation. This is the epic story of the Battle of Hastings, the day the Anglo-Saxons fell and the Normans rose. Stay tuned for the battle that reshaped history. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 was one of the most significant turning points in European history. It marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule and the beginning of a new Norman dynasty that reshaped England's political, social, and cultural landscape. The central event of this conquest was the Battle of Hastings, a fierce and decisive confrontation between William, Duke of Normandy, and King Harald II of England. This battle was the culmination of a succession crisis that had thrown England into turmoil following the death of Edward the Confessor. Edward the Confessor, who had ruled England for over 2 decades, died on January 5, 1066, without leaving an heir. His passing created a power vacuum that multiple claimants sought to fill. Harald Godwinson, Earl of Wessex, was the most powerful noble in England and had been a key figure in Edward's court. On Edward's deathbed, Harald was reportedly named as his successor, and the Witnagemot, the Council of English Nobles, confirmed his ascension. However, Harald's claim was not unchallenged. William of Normandy, a distant relative of Edward, insisted that Edward had promised him the throne years earlier. William also claimed that Harald had sworn an oath of fealty to him during a visit to Normandy, though the circumstances of this oath were disputed. Another contender was Harald Hardrada of Norway, who based his claim on an old agreement between previous English and Norwegian rulers. With 3 powerful men vying for the throne, England faced inevitable conflict. Harald's reign was immediately tested when Harald Hardrada launched an invasion of northern England in September 1066. Allied with Harald's estranged brother, Godwinson, Hardrada's forces landed in Yorkshire and defeated the English Earls Edwin and Morcar at the Battle of Fulford on September 20th. News of the invasion forced Harald to march his army north at great speed. In an astonishing show of military prowess, he surprised the Norwegians at Stamford Bridge on September 25th. The battle was brutal and decisive. Hardrada and Tostig were both killed, and the Norse forces were shattered. The victory secured Harald's northern flank, but it came at a heavy cost. His army had suffered significant losses, and his men were exhausted after their rapid march in battle. Even as Harald celebrated his triumph, word arrived that William of Normandy had landed at Pevensey Bay on September 28th with a well-prepared army. William had spent months assembling a formidable invasion force, consisting of cavalry, infantry, and archers from Normandy and other parts of France. He had also secured the papal banner, giving his invasion a veneer of religious legitimacy. Upon landing, the Normans fortified their position and began pillaging the surrounding countryside, forcing Harald to respond quickly. Instead of resting and regrouping, Harald made the fateful decision to march his battle-weary army south to confront William. The English army was primarily composed of the vied, a militia of common soldiers who were called upon during times of war. These men were not full-time warriors, and their equipment varied widely. However, the army also included the housecarls, elite professional soldiers who wielded massive 2-handed axes. The backbone of the English strategy was the shield wall formation, a tightly packed line of warriors who interlocked their shields to create a nearly impenetrable defense. Harold's troops took up a strong defensive position on Senlac Hill, near Hastings, giving them the advantage of higher ground. William's army was a more structured and diverse force. It consisted of heavy cavalry, well-trained infantry, and skilled archers. The Normans were experienced in siege warfare and battlefield tactics, making them a formidable opponent. Unlike the English, who fought almost entirely on foot, the Normans relied heavily on cavalry, which provided mobility and shock power. William understood that breaking the English shield wall would be the key to victory. On the morning of October 14th, 1066, the battle commenced. The Normans initiated the attack with a barrage of arrows, but the English shield wall held firm. William then sent his infantry and cavalry up the hill, but the English defenders repelled each assault. The shield wall remained intact and Norman losses mounted. At one point, rumors spread that William had been killed, causing panic among his troops. To restore order, William removed his helmet and rode through the ranks, shouting that he was alive and urging his men to fight on. Realizing that frontal assaults were ineffective, William adopted a new tactic. He ordered his troops to feign retreat, luring sections of the English army away from their defensive position. When the pursuing English soldiers broke formation, the Normans turned and counterattacked, cutting them down. This strategy was repeated multiple times throughout the day, gradually wearing down the English forces. As the battle wore on, gaps began to appear in the shield wall. The turning point came in the late afternoon. A Norman arrow struck Harald in the eye, severely wounding him. With their king incapacitated, the English line wavered. The Normans launched a final, determined assault, overwhelming the remaining defenders. Harald was killed, along with many of his loyal housecarls. The English army, now leaderless and exhausted, began to break apart. As darkness fell, the battlefield was littered with the bodies of the fallen, and the Norman victory was complete. With Harald dead and his army destroyed, resistance to William's claim all but collapsed. The Normans began their march toward London, encountering only scattered opposition. The remaining English nobles, recognizing the futility of further resistance, eventually submitted to William. On Christmas Day 1066, he was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey. His coronation marked the beginning of Norman rule, bringing profound changes to England's political and social structures. The consequences of the Norman conquest were far-reaching. William implemented the feudal system, redistributing land to his Norman followers and displacing the Anglo-Saxon nobility. The English language and culture underwent significant transformation as Norman French influenced the development of Middle English. The construction of castles across England reinforced Norman control and altered the landscape. Rebellions erupted in the years following the conquest, but William's harsh suppression ensured that his rule remained secure. The Battle of Hastings was more than a military victory. It was a turning point that reshaped England's destiny. The Norman conquest established a new ruling elite and laid the foundations for the medieval English monarchy. The events of 1066 continue to be studied and remembered as one of the most pivotal moments in history, a testament to the enduring impact of warfare and political ambition. The Norman conquest did not end with William's victory at Hastings. Although he had secured the throne, his rule was met with resistance from various parts of England. Rebellions erupted in the north, where the people resented Norman control, and in other regions where local lords sought to restore Anglo-Saxon rule. William responded with brutal efficiency, crushing uprisings with military force and devastating the land. His most infamous act was a harrying of the north in 1069 to 1070, during which he ordered widespread destruction of crops, livestock, and villages, leading to mass starvation. This harsh suppression cemented Norman authority, but left deep scars on the English population. The conquest brought lasting changes to England's governance and society. William introduced the feudal system, redistributing land to his Norman followers and effectively eliminating the old Anglo-Saxon aristocracy. The Domesday Book, completed in 1086, recorded land ownership and resources across England, serving as a foundation for Norman administration. The Normans also reshaped England's architecture, building castles and cathedrals that demonstrated their dominance and reinforced their rule. Culturally, the conquest had a profound impact. The English language evolved as Norman French merged with Old English, giving rise to Middle English. The legal system and governance structures adapted to Norman influences, laying the groundwork for the medieval English monarchy. Over time, the distinction between Normans and Anglo-Saxons faded, as intermarriage and cultural blending created a new English identity. William ruled England until his death in 1087, but the legacy of the Norman conquest endured long after. The events of 1066 marked the last successful foreign invasion of England and shaped the nation's development for centuries. The Battle of Hastings was not just a moment of military triumph. It was a transformative event that altered the course of history. The Norman influence on England's politics, language, and society remains evident to this day, a testament to the enduring impact of one of history's most significant conquests.